Hey everyone, welcome to another Sunday live coaching. How are you doing? Did you sail this week? Hey Dom Dom, I've been sailing. Excuse me. Whew. Yeah, I've been sailing. We've had some wind on Maui. It's been super windy, as you can see from the video. And this wasn't even the windiest day. This day I was on a 4.5, and there were other days where I was on a 4.2, which is unusually windy for Maui. This was a very windy week, but it was good to get on the water. We've still got wind. It's even windy today. I don't know what the waves are doing. I took the day off yesterday because I was pretty tired from all the days on the water. How are you doing, though? Hey, Jorg, Axel. Axel's in Morocco. Had 5 sessions this week. Awesome. Ragnar, no sailing, unfortunately. Hello, Rasmus. Hans. Steen. John. Hello, hello, hello. Dennis. No waves, but cruising around with your son. Sounds awesome. Hey, some good sailing. Matt. Marco. Cool. We got a good crew today. Good to see everyone here. We are going to jump into the Facebook group soon. Let me think if I've got any other things to add. Oh, this was a hard crash. I wanted to do a little floater there, but got hung up. I just mistimed it with the wind. It kind of pulled me too far forward off the wave, and then it smashed me. But anyway, and I was falling on these. I'm not sure why. Not making those that day. Some days you make them, some days you don't. It's with these moves, the goiters, the 360s. Sometimes they just work really easily, and then you'll get a day where they don't, which is just part of the process. It's important not to get frustrated. And if, that same thing is for you, tax or whatever, where one day you're just not making your tax, it's also fine. It's important not to be too hard on yourself. It's something that I have learned a lot about watching myself and watching the coaching. It can be easy to be really hard on yourself, but that actually impedes progress. So John is asking what sail size this is. This is a 4.5. The other day I was on a 4.2. I think the day after this it was pretty windy. Stina, hey Stina, long time no see. She's had 6 out of 9 days. Awesome. I've been learning about fear. I've been doing a lot of work. I think fear is a really important topic, and it's an important topic. Jorg turned me on to an article about fear. He posted it in the think tank, and that put me down a rabbit hole thinking about fear and learning more about fear and other people's approaches to fear. And I've always thought about fear. It's a really important topic when we're talking about wave sailing. But I've really been learning a lot. And a few of the things I've learned, and I'm going to have more concrete lessons and strategies that I'll integrate in the coaching somewhere. But just kind of freestyling what I've found interesting up until now, I've found it really interesting thinking of fear as something that's necessary. And I think that wave riding needs fear in order for it to be fun. And fear is not something to be avoided. It's not something to be shied away from. It's something to embrace and acknowledge that it's normal and separate fear from the situation. So maybe you're in a situation that you can't handle, in which case you need to get out of that situation. But if you are in a situation that you can handle, then fear is not something to be avoided. It's something to be acknowledged and ridden, sort of like riding a horse. And some of these concepts that I find really powerful, I find they really resonate with me about the importance of fear. Afraid, if you're not afraid riding waves, there's also something a little bit missing. Is I think not that you need to put yourself in dangerous situations, but part of your evolution as a wave sailor is getting into, as you desensitize, is getting yourself into situations where you're still able to experience a safe amount of fear and enjoy that, because the fear is what makes it exciting. The fear is an important part of that process. All right, I'm going to jump into the Facebook group. You guys know the drill. Interrupt me if you want, and we can talk about whatever. Hey, Christoph. All right, let's get the Facebook group up and running. All right, first up, we've got a post from Cabo Verde. Awesome pictures. Thank you, Maureen, for posting them. And she has a question about her sail getting backwinded, but she said that she didn't notice it. And I think if you don't notice it, and then you can see it's not backwinded here, it's driving, it doesn't matter. This looks solid. I'm not really sure why that can happen. I think it can happen when the wind is light, you have a lot of apparent wind, and then you lean the sail forward into it. But as long as it's not impeding you, it doesn't matter. I guess one way, if you want to avoid that, is before you go into that bottom turn to be really leaning back and try and get power in the sail from the speed of the wave. And then as you go into the bottom turn, you do this transition where you're going from back to forward, which is that sort of classic lay down bottom turn that you see in down the line places like Hoquipa or Cabo Verde. But Maureen, this looks solid. So if it's working for you, don't worry about how this photo looks, is what I would say. All right, next up, we've got this post from Willem about backside 360s and takas. So let's watch the backside 360 first. Let's make this full screen. All right, so this looks like the correct section for doing a backside 360, especially these sort of European sections where you have a big whitewater kind of wall that you're going into. He's coming into it in the right place, maybe a little bit high on the wall. You can come a little bit lower down, but in general, it looks really good. But he's not really getting the rotation. The rotation stops. So there's a lot that Willem is doing correct. But there's one thing he can do differently that's going to make a huge difference. It's like magic. It's cool to be able to teach this move. I'm excited about this moment because really this trick took me years to figure out. And now once I have it figured out, I can transfer that knowledge to someone and hopefully they can just implement it in, a couple of weeks rather than a couple of years, which is exciting for me. So Willem, I really want to hear how the progress goes. Now, a few caveats. If you're not Willem, if you're someone else wanting to go into these moves, Willem has a lot of the fundamentals already in place. He's got the right section, the right timing. He's got a lot of the right elements of the initiation, the board angle, how he's throwing the sail. A lot of these things are correct. And so he really only needs to change one thing. And this is the one counterintuitive trick that will then be the difference between not making these and making these moves. But if you're someone else, you've got to work on some of these other fundamentals first. I recommend getting really good on just the plain backsides where you're throwing the sail back, the body forward, climbing on the whitewater, getting those high five sections. But Willem, what you need to do in order to start making these is instead of twisting your shoulders and your head in the direction you're going, push them towards the tail of your board. Now, it can feel like going towards the tail of the board. In reality, it's probably 45 degrees off the tail of the board, right? So it's somewhere over here. It feels like you're throwing your shoulders, your upper body, your head into the flats of the wave somewhere behind you over here, if you can see where my mouse is. And so your whole body is leaning over into that pit. And it feels kind of scary at first. You really have to trust it because you're throwing your body into the hole of this wave and it feels like you're going to fall on your face. But that is the magic position, and then you just rotate through it. And so it can be helpful to think about twisting your shoulders and even your head to look over here to make that happen. You don't have to look with the head. I find it useful to look with the head, but you don't have to. And so if you see some videos of backside 360, sometimes the person isn't looking with the head, but they are getting the shoulders and body lean in that same direction. And so leaning the head can help that happen. Hey, Max. So here's a video of me doing it. We can make this. So you can see I'm really exaggerating, and that's what helps me then do these consistently, is really exaggerating this initiation where my shoulders, my head are all leaning over here somewhere. And they're not pointing towards the tail of the board, but it kind of feels that way. Especially this front hand is really driving back. And so everything is pushing over here in this direction, really leaning, falling into that hole, and not looking in the direction, not twisting in the direction of the rotation, but actually the other way. And then it just makes a super nice rotation. It's kind of like magic. All right, let's find our place. Where were we? All right, next up, Willem is working on takas. Taka is more complicated and a little bit farther away from the foundation that Willem has. I put a few tips in there in the comments. You want to work on them on small waves. There's a video from Pozo that I posted in the comments. So Continent 7 is a great resource for any move, really, if you want to see videos of moves. So here's an example. Hey, Tomas, from Marino in Pozo. And this is the kind of taka you want to do when you're learning how to do taka. So in a little whitewater section, finding the corner pocket or even just on the whitewater. And there's a few things that I want to point out here. One is how close he keeps his front hand to him. So if we compare to Willem's video, let's watch the video. He starts to push forward with the front hand very soon. So you can see the front hand is already starting to push forward. Whereas here, the tail starts sliding, and then it's not until he gets backwards that he pushes the front hand around. Now, there are a few different ways to do these takas, but I think this can be a helpful exercise, especially in the beginning, to start to figure out the dynamics. Because too often when people are learning takas, they push the sail too far forward too early. It gets backwinded, they get pushed back. And what can be really helpful is keeping that sail, that front arm kind of close to your body, and really just focusing on your board, keeping all of your weight on that front foot, and thinking about your board and body and less the sail. So you can see he's got his front arm bent. It's still close to him, and he's going backwards even. And then he wants to finish that rotation. So there he pushes forward. Here's another taka from Mussolini, also from Pozo, similar section. I love the bottom turn on this. This is a great example. So we talk a lot about onshore bottom turns, and this is a really good example of one. This is such a beautiful onshore bottom turn from Mussolini. And you can see how twisted his lower body is compared to his upper body. And you can see how pushed into the turn his hips are. So you see how rotated into the turn his hips are and how much he's leaning over. So we talk about touching your nose to the water sometimes in this gap. And he's almost doing that. I mean, look, his knees are pretty much touching the water, and his hips are so twisted that his lower body looks completely parallel with the water. The spray is getting a little bit in the way here, but hopefully you can see how twisted he is. And this is a beautiful example because his hips really are facing the water. The hips are facing the toes. He's really getting leaned over. And of course, the upper body has to twist to compensate, to hold on to the sail. But it's a beautiful example of hips turned into the turn and comes around, hits the corner pocket section that we're talking about, keeps the front hand close again while he's initiating the turn. And then once he starts sliding backwards, pushes the front hand forward to go into the taka. This is another beautiful example. I love that one. A good way to practice takas is doing clue first, switch stance box. All right, next up, we have a question from Leonardo. Hello, Leonardo. He's been reading about strap size and he wants tight on the sides, loose on the top. And Ben Profit's video about twisting the foot around. How tight on the sides to make it. I think you want it comfortable. You want to be able to come out. You want to be able to come in. So not too tight that you can't do that. All right, how do you tighten the straps? Different hole selection, washers. Most boards have 2 screw holes per side. Going narrow on the back is easy, but what about the front straps? I suppose I have to use non-parallel screw holes. I guess most production boards just have a single insert in the front, so you just can skip a hole. But washers are also a great way to go narrower. You could buy washers like stainless steel round ones shown here, or your board comes with, if it's a production board, probably comes with plastic washers, and you can switch those around. They're asymmetric actually. And if you switch those around, it will make the strap tighter. So if you switch both of them around, you can get about a ½ inch narrower. So that's hopefully answering your question, Leonardo. Otherwise, there's a lot of great comments in here as well. All right, next up, we have some more awesome footage from Jakob with his 360 camera, and let's watch it. Let's make it full screen. All right. All right, so as I've said before, Jakob, I love his camera angle. Perfect. All right, so let's dissect this. So this is a good job of carrying speed, hitting the section, getting the high five. There's a few things we could do a little bit differently, but there's a lot of basics covered here, and you can see that you're able to keep some speed. On the second turn, I want to see you use that whitewater to turn around rather than your muscles and power. So you can come up to this whitewater and just get a high five on it, and it will turn you around. But by trying to turn around in front of it, you lose your speed, the whitewater hits you, and you fall. So use the power of the wave to do your cutback. There's something also subtle here, which I'll talk about on the initiation. It's not a huge point. I would focus more on the other point. But when you're getting started, you're very far back, which means then you've got to go very far forward to get initiated. So I would like to see you, I think it might be good to unhook a little bit earlier. Might give that a try. It might be more comfortable. All right, let's go on to the next clip. Oof. So there's a lot of good things going on here. All right, coming into this section, driving this cutback. The nose gets caught and you go forward. But this is a good effort. This is a good effort. Even though you fall, this is dynamic. You're in the dynamic part of the wave. You're on the rail. I think what's going on here is you're thinking about your next turn, and that puts your weight forward. And then also because your eye is looking down the line, but your board is traveling up the line, then where you're looking and where you're going are crossed, which then can lead to getting caught up, tangled up like this and falling over. And so while you're completing a nice carbon cutback like this, if you're looking instead of down the line, if you're looking in the direction you're going, so somewhere sort of where your nose is pointing, then your weight will be more back. You'll stay more on the rail. And then instead of the nose catching, you'll keep carving around in that turn and come out of it. So I think this is an example of not trying to end those turns too early, but staying on that rail, really sitting on the cutback rail and letting the board do the work for you. Hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense? Hey, Greg, good evening. All right, is this? Hear the sound now. All right. Is this the clip we already saw? Let's see. I think this is. If not, it's very similar. No, we already saw this. All right. So, Jakob, those are the 2 comments. Let me know what you think. I'll post some more stuff in the chat as well. All right, next up, we've got another post from Jakob with this forward loop. Let's make it full screen. Again, I love this camera angle. Looks nice. Jakob wants to land more on his board rather than his back. There's one simple thing that you can do. I mean, there's a few different technical things we can talk about, but there's one simple thing you can do. That's moving this front hand farther back. So instead of having the front hand so far forward, and this is pretty far forward, put it actually back, so close to these harness lines. You can even have that front hand touching the harness line, and that will help the sail open up, and even without changing much in the rotation, just having that front hand there, for example, would allow the sail to be the luff of the sail to be a little bit higher up, so there would still be wind pulling it at this point in the rotation, right? This point in the rotation, and that helps finish it. So then you're landing more on the board. It also helps to make a more horizontal rotation. There are a lot of positives. So that's the one thing I would say to do before thinking about anything else, because that will make a big difference. And then we can talk about other technical things as well later. This is a little bit cheese rolly, but which there's nothing wrong with that. That's cool. But getting that hand over will help. All right, let's move on. All right, we have another clip from Tamaz. He's working on rotating his hips. Let's make this full screen. Nice, high five. Yeah, so this is a good example of a corner pocket high five. Boom, and everything just works. All right. Next. Again. So, Tamaz, have you had any sailing since you've been back in Europe? So Tamaz, frequent member, moderator in our group, and he just spent a month on Maui. Here's a nice high five. Look at that. See how he's getting the bottom of the board, the angle of the bottom of the board to match the power of the wave. So he gets that energy transfer, and then it just pushes him to safety. Gets a little bit caught up in the white water, but in general pushes him to safety. All right. Another one. These are good. So once you start getting the high fives, then it's about refining the technique, refining the bottom turn, refining what you're doing off the top. Are you doing a turn? Are you doing an aerial? I like the completion on this turn, Tamaz. I like that you're looking back up the line. Oh, it's very shallow there. Again, and this is a good setup for aerials too, how you're hitting it like this. I like these a lot. One thing you can do, which is sort of a next level combination, is when you do a turn like this and you complete the cutback, go right into a backside. Hit that section. Backside, front side to backside. They feel super good. All right. Another high five. Ooh, nice. Getting a little bit of tail out of the water. Looks solid. I'm impressed. You had a good trip. I think you learned a lot. All right. Jakob. Cool, man. I love your enthusiasm. Sensei Jakob charging out there. Love to see it. Hey, Bart. All right, let's keep going. So Tomas, unless you have another question, I'm gonna move on. But I think like this video, it really shows, I think, more success than anything else. It really shows you adapting to Hokipa, new conditions, Maui conditions, getting those high fives, getting the rails engaged, and yeah, stoked for you. I posted some raw footage. You can find it on YouTube. Here, we already saw this in the beginning, but we can watch it again. So I was quite happy with this first turn. I like these turns where the board comes off the water a little bit, but then the rail engagement on the end of the turn is also really present. So you get that acceleration out of the cutback. That's one of the things I'm looking for in my cutbacks. And then I wanted to do a little floater, actually. I didn't want to do an aerial. I wanted to do a little floater, but I kind of mistimed it, and it's super windy, and I don't know what else is going on. And so I get launched off the wave. So I wanted to keep contact on the wave. But I get launched off the wave, launches me up, and then I just slam. Boom. Ouch. All right, next up, we got a question from Gonan. Let's make this full screen. All right. Can we make the quality higher? So this is in Israel, I believe. Hips are turned into the turn. Bottom turn looks good. Could cheat out a little bit more on that bottom turn, but overall looks good. Getting that high five, everything looks good. So why is he going out the back? And that's his question. A lot of the elements are in here. There's one big reason why, and there are a few smaller reasons why, and people in the comments have already highlighted these reasons. So like I always say, the members of this community are really the magic of everything. So thank you guys. The one big reason is that the wave doesn't have much power. This is a really weak wave. So whenever you see whitewater sort of dancing on the top of a wave like this, but the wave isn't really breaking, that means it has very little power. And so if you look at this section, the whitewater is sort of bouncing around, dancing on the top of the wave, but the wave's not breaking. It has very, very little power. And so to deal with that, you need to adjust a little bit. And so there's a few things you can do to adjust. And one is hitting that power lower down. And so if you hit that power here instead of up here, you're trying to get the high five lower down, you'll stay more in the wave. So just aiming a little bit lower down, and then staying pretty low with your body as well can be helpful. You're already doing that a bit. But so instead of hitting it up top here, you want to change this position to lower down here. And then that will help to capture more of that energy. And then the second thing, which the commenters have already pointed out, is you want to look where you're going. And so right now you're looking out the back of the wave. Doesn't help for getting back inside the wave. And so get that head looking. You can be looking down the line or towards the beach. But it doesn't have to be actually looking towards the beach. I mean, you can have it looking forward, but this is looking kind of back out to sea, which you don't want. So you can have your head kind of down and on your chest, but I find that works best when the wave is really powerful, and then you're really kind of levering to get that board on its edge. So there's some pictures of me where I've got my head like down on my chest and the board is upside down in the lip. But this wave isn't that kind of wave. And so you might be more benefited by looking more down the line. You probably don't want to be twisting your head too much, but looking at least in front of the wave down the line rather than out the back. And then bringing those hands a little bit closer together will also allow the sail to come a little bit more upright and help propel you forward. So those are the main things. If you just change where you're hitting it, you'll make it back inside. But if you tweak those other few things, it will also help. All right, Tomas said he's been sailing since he's been back from Maui. Portac, cold but fun. Nice. All right. Here is a video that Jakob posted of me This is me in Denmark. Let's watch it. So Jakob posted this as a reference for the bottom turn. One thing I want to highlight here is how much I'm looking around, how active I am. So I'm always checking to see, am I on a wave I want to ride? Am I in a position on the wave that is going to be good for setting up my bottom turn? So like I'm looking around, I'm looking up the line, looking back out to sea, checking the wave, and that's important. And then, okay, here I'm setting up, get some speed, get low before you go. And then pushing the sail away from me, leaning forward, trying to get those hips twisted into the turn, leaning forward. And then that high five, we can watch that in real speed. So thank you, Jakob, for posting this. And I think this wave kind of disappears. All right, we got a question from Jeff. I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Am I missing someone? We've got new posts on. Okay, so we should be going in the right order. All right, we've got a post from Jeff. Some magic seaweed is going away. Oh, no. So that means that your bookmarks are no longer going to work. So what are some other forecasting sites? I like WindGuru. WindGuru has its problems, but I like WindGuru. Forecasting models, if like sometimes I'll look at the different they have one just for swell, and you can see the primary, secondary, and tertiary swell models. So I like WindGuru. Windy is also nice, but you guys have different experiences. So if you have a forecasting site that you really like, let Jeff know. Post it in the comments what works for you and where. I like iWindsurf as well. I use iWindsurf a lot. It's not necessarily for forecasting, more for sensors. All right, next up, we've got this post from Caro. So she has been working on her forwards, and whoa, what progress, right on, Caro. Round of applause. I mean, this is so awesome to see. So Caro's been working on her forwards for years, and she has a plan and a structure for her training, and it's the slow and steady approach. She's not trying to rush it. She's ignoring the people that tell her, just go for it, just huck it. She's been working on her plan, and it's a really good example of having a plan, sticking to it, and having a plan that you can commit to. And so Carl didn't want to do the just huck it method because that didn't work for her, and it doesn't work for a lot of people. But instead of just giving up there, she came up with a plan, a learning plan for learning these forwards that was slow. It took years, but steady. And now she's got it. Now those years of work are starting to pay off. Look at this. This is a full-on forward loop. And so now she's working on getting a little bit higher, working on the rotation, but these are forwards. She's throwing forwards. And so this is awesome to see. And it should be really inspiring as well for everyone else watching, because it shows that if you have a learning plan, even if it feels like you're going slow, but you're sticking to the plan, you're going to get to where you want to go. And if you're trying to find shortcuts, if you're trying to just do it, you might not. All right, next up, we've got a post from Axel. Last minute upload from Morocco. Float and ride session 4794 in Moulay. He's working on timing and keeping speed in light winds. All right, so let's try to overcome his natural fear of rocks. So, Axel, let's put what I was just talking about in terms of fear into practice. Don't try to overcome the fear. Feel the fear, ride the fear, accept that the fear is normal, and the fear is actually what makes it fun. It would be way less fun if there was no fear. Now, the rocks can be dangerous. So manage that situation. But when you feel that fear, you feel the fear in your body, instead of trying to overcome it or push it out, acknowledge it, acknowledge that it's there, be aware of what that feeling feels like, and just let it be. Just let it be. Acknowledge that that's what makes it fun, and try and separate that from your actions. All right, let's make this full screen. All right. Nice long waves. Axel's nice and active. Boom, there's a high five. And another one. So this first part is, I believe, in front of where the rocks are. So Axel's riding a little bit more in front of the wave. All right, so let's watch here where there's a little bit more juice. This is a harder bottom turn. Coming up into the section. So Axel, it looks like you could get your hips lower. Now, it's hard to see in this video from this angle what you're doing with your hips, but from how this looks, it looks like you're standing up a little bit on the cutback. I want to see you really focus on dropping those hips. Really focus on dropping those hips. Oh, I just lost. Hold on. All right, can you guys see this? My screen just went weird. Okay, you guys can see it. So really focus on dropping those hips rather than pushing them forward. I mean, this is a high five. You're getting that energy connection. It must feel great. And it's hard to see fully with this angle. So maybe you are really dropping the hips. How upright it looks like you are here, that you could get those hips lower. Try and get a little bit more horizontal. Going for that whitewater turn. So this is a good example. And Jakob, here's a good example of that high five that we're talking about earlier. So the wave's already broken. He's done this high five, but there's still some whitewater. Goes for the whitewater turn, and then lets the wave do the work. And you can see when the board is hitting that whitewater, Axel's not trying to turn it. The whitewater hits it and does the turn for him afterwards. So that's a good example. Something that you could work on, Axel, which is just a fun exercise, and it's something I recommend everyone, is try to do some cutbacks with your backhand off. So you take off your backhand, and that's a good exercise. I think we worked on that a little bit when we were together in Denmark, and it's a great exercise because it forces you to not rely on the sail and to be really aware of what's happening with the board, and they look cool. So that's an exercise for Axel and for everyone to work on. Just like that, we're caught up. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. All right, everyone. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, videos, photos, all of the above, you can post it in the Facebook group right there. Otherwise, I will see you next week, Sunday. Thank you for showing up. I love your questions. They never get old. You can post questions about anything. You can post questions about mindset, about fear, about gear, about technique. Post it in the group. I love the conversations that we get going. The wind is coming back now. People are coming out of the winter and into summertime sailing. So I'm expecting more questions, more photos, more video. All right. I will sign off and see you next week, Sunday, and in the Facebook group. In the meantime, take care. Have a good week. I hope it's windy. I hope you have fun. Get on the water and have some high fives for me. All right, everyone. Take care. Goodbye.